Think back to the summer of 2019 for a second. Real Madrid had just gone through the emotional earthquake of losing Cristiano Ronaldo, and the club needed a new face of the project. New posters, new marketing campaigns, new hope. And into that spotlight walked Eden Hazard. This wasn't some risky gamble on potential. Hazard arrived from Chelsea as one of the best players in the world, a Premier League superstar coming off electric seasons in England. The narrative wrote itself. He would be the man to take over the number 7 legacy, to bring back the spark to Bernabeu, to ease the pain of Ronaldo's departure. For Madridistas, it felt like the start of a new era. But instead of a smooth transition from London hero to Madrid legend, things fell apart almost immediately. Just a few months after pulling on the white shirt, Hazard suffered that now famous ankle injury. What looked at first like a setback turned into the defining moment of his Real Madrid career. The timing, the complications, the recurring problems. It all meant we never truly saw the Chelsea version of Hazard in Spain. From there, it was a cycle of comebacks and relapses. Every preseason felt like it might finally be the year he turned the page. Every time he started to show glimpses of his brilliance, something went wrong physically. In the end, after an incredibly frustrating spell that never came close to those sky-high expectations, Hazard mutually agreed to part ways with Real Madrid and retired not long after. One of the most exciting signings of the post-Ronaldo period ended up as one of the biggest what-ifs. Now, with his boots hung up and the pressure of weekly expectations gone, Hazard has started to speak more openly about his career, including his time at Real. In a recent conversation with La Gazzetta dello Sport, he looked back at his journey and picked out the moments that meant the most to him. And despite everything that happened in Madrid, he didn't hesitate to include that chapter among the highlights. For Hazard, one of the absolute peaks of his career was the 2018 World Cup with Belgium. He called third place in Russia a real success, and it's not hard to see why. Belgium is a relatively small country on the football map, but that tournament was the moment their golden generation truly delivered. Hazard was at his absolute best there, leading attacks, taking players on, stepping up in big matches. Even in a star-studded team, he stood out as the driving force. He also looked back fondly on facing Chelsea as an opponent for the first time, a moment full of emotion given everything he achieved there. And then, somewhat surprisingly for those who only remember the injuries and criticism, he spoke warmly about Real Madrid as well. Hazard admitted that yes, his time in Spain was unlucky. The injuries and circumstances stopped him from reaching the level everyone expected. But even so, actually playing at the Santiago Bernabeu, wearing that shirt, stepping onto that pitch, was something he had dreamed about since he was a kid. For a boy growing up watching Champions League nights on TV, the Bernabeu isn't just another stadium, it's an icon. Hazard made it clear that, regardless of how things turned out professionally, just being part of that environment for a few years was a fulfillment of a childhood ambition. He didn't try to rewrite history or pretend the signing was a success. He simply separated the disappointment of performances from the personal meaning of achieving that dream. Then, in classic Hazard fashion, he moved from reflecting on the past to looking ahead at Real Madrid's future, and he did it by talking about a rising star far from Spain. He turned his attention to Serie A and a name that's been buzzing around European football lately, Kenan Yildiz. Yildiz, one of the standout young talents in Italy, has clearly caught Hazard's eye. He sounded almost like a proud dad when he brought him up, saying his own kids are obsessed with watching Yildiz's clips. They spend time replaying his dribbles and goals, and they talk about wanting to see him play in the Premier League one day. But Hazard sees something a little different. While his children dream about England, Hazard looks at Yildiz's style and mindset and sees the profile of a Real Madrid player. That's a big statement. When someone who's lived inside that club and understands what it means to carry that weight says, this guy looks like someone who belongs there, it sticks with people. He didn't break down Yildiz's game in deep tactical detail, but you can connect the dots. We're talking about a young attacking talent who plays with personality, confidence, and flair. Someone who doesn't look scared by big moments. In other words, exactly the kind of forward Real Madrid fans fall in love with. And coming from Hazard, who was once supposed to be that kind of marquee signing at the Bernabeu, that praise carries extra weight. From recommending Real Madrid keep an eye on Serie A, Hazard then circled back to a much more personal subject: how he sees himself versus Cristiano Ronaldo, and how that comparison was handled by one of his former coaches, Maurizio Sarri. At one point during Sarri's time coaching, he apparently used Hazard as a reference point in discussions involving Cristiano Ronaldo. It was meant as a compliment, but Hazard was never fully comfortable with it. In his interview, he explained that he actually told Sarri he didn't want to be used as a measuring stick in that way. He wasn't trying to be dramatic about it. He just didn't like the idea of being held up as an example for a player like Cristiano, or vice versa. Hazard stressed that he never wanted to live like someone else's version of a perfect professional. His personality, both on and off the pitch, was always about being himself. He admitted openly that he wasn't the type who refused every invite, never went out, and lived a life of total restriction. If his friends called him to go to dinner, he went. If he was in the mood to have a drink, he didn't automatically say no. For him, that balance between football and enjoying his life mattered. He never wanted to be the player who went so far into obsession that everything else disappeared. That doesn't mean he was casual or didn't care. It just means he wasn't trying to copy Ronaldo's famously extreme level of discipline. In Hazard's own words, Cristiano is Cristiano, and he is Hazard. He didn't want to be a clone. He wanted to be himself and play football his way. You can interpret that however you like. Some fans will find it refreshing, an honest admission that not every player wants to live like a robot, constantly calculating every calorie. Others will look at his injuries and the decline late in his career and wonder if a stricter lifestyle might have prolonged his peak. But whether you approve or not, there's something undeniably human about him, refusing to pretend he was something he wasn't. When the conversation moved to the managers who influenced the most, Hazard didn't hesitate. The best coach he ever had, in his view, was Jose Mourinho. Coming from someone who worked under several huge names, that's a strong verdict. He described Mourinho as an exceptional communicator, someone whose way of thinking about the game and then transmitting those ideas to his squad was on another level. It matches a lot of what we've heard from other players who thrived under Mourinho, that he could get inside their heads, understand what made them tick, and get them to buy into his plans completely when things were going well. Those Chelsea years under Mourinho were some of Hazard's finest. He was devastating in the Premier League, and Mourinho built a system that maximized his strengths, giving him freedom in attack while demanding discipline from the rest of the structure. That mix of trust and tactical clarity clearly left a lasting impression. Hazard was also candid about the other big-name coaches he worked with, and he did it with a mix of respect and humor. He recalled that during his time with Maurizio Sarri, he would sometimes tell his coach to his face that the training sessions were boring. He didn't present it as some huge insult or falling out. In fact, he was quick to say it wasn't meant as real criticism, because at the end of the day, the results backed Sarri up. Anyone who's watched the Sarri team knows his football is heavily based on repetition, patterns, and precision. That kind of training can easily feel monotonous to attacking players who love spontaneity. But Hazard acknowledged that those drills, dull or not, did what they were supposed to do on the pitch. Then there was Antonio Conte, another Italian coach he remembered as incredible, but in a very different way. With Conte, the word that stuck with him was endless. Endless repetitions, endless tactical work, endless demands. Conte's reputation for intensity is legendary, and Hazard confirmed it from a player's perspective. Training under him wasn't easy, but it produced results. Conte turned Chelsea into a machine in the season they dominated the Premier League with that back three system. So in the span of a few years, Hazard went from Mourinho to Conte to Sarri. Three coaches with completely different personalities, methods, and football philosophies. It's no surprise he has strong opinions on all of them. But the fact that he can joke about boring training and tough sessions, yet still underline how effective those methods were, shows a certain level of maturity and fairness in how he looks back on his career. To round off his reflections, Hazard talked about something that might surprise fans who always associate him with English football and then Real Madrid: his relationship with Italy. For all the Italian influence around him through Sarri, Conte, and Serie A interest, he said moving to Serie A himself was never really at the center of his plans. He mentioned that Massimo Moratti, the former Inter president, spoke highly of him over the years, and showed admiration. That kind of attention from someone so important in Italian football clearly made an impression. But even with that flattery, Hazard admitted his dreams were focused elsewhere. From a young age, he imagined himself playing in the Premier League and eventually at Real Madrid. And in the end, that's exactly what he did. Whatever anyone thinks about how his time in Spain ended, he ticked off the two destinations he had always wanted most. Then he shared a little secret that probably made AC Milan supporters smile. As a kid, before he ever became a professional, Hazard was actually a Milan fan. You can picture it. A young Eden watching those classic Milan sides, full of stars, lifting European cups and dominating Serie A. The red and black stripes clearly left a mark on him. He never ended up playing there, but that early admiration stayed part of the story. When you put it all together, Hazard's reflections paint a very complete picture of a career that had everything. Incredible highs, painful lows, childhood dreams fulfilled, and major opportunities that didn't quite work out. He doesn't shy away from the disappointment of his Real Madrid chapter, but he also refuses to reduce his time there to failure. For him, being on that pitch, in that shirt, was still special. Even now, he clearly still thinks about Madrid, not just his own time there, but what comes next to the club. His praise for Kenan Yildiz as a potential Real Madrid type player almost feels like passing the torch. In a way, he was once signed to be the next big star at the Bernabeu. Now, from the outside, he's pointing toward the next generation. Hazard's honesty about who he is, the lifestyle he chose, and the way he approached his career might frustrate some fans who wanted him to squeeze every last drop out of his talent. But that same honesty is what makes these insights so interesting. You're hearing from someone who reached the top, fell short in one of the hardest jobs in football, replacing Cristiano Ronaldo at Real Madrid, and is now comfortable enough to talk about all of it without hiding. So where do you stand on Eden Hazard's legacy? Was he simply unlucky in Spain, or did his more relaxed approach to life and football play a part in how things turned out at Real Madrid? And what do you make of his shout for Kenan Yildiz as a future real player? Can you see him in white, play at the Bernabeu that Hazard once dreamed of? However you answer those questions, one thing is clear. Even in retirement, Eden Hazard still finds a way to put himself right back into the heart of the football conversation.